Hey everybody, how's it going? Andrew here, and I just have a quick and simple favor to ask of you. And that is, if you're a fan of the show, then share it with someone you know. That's it. If you really find this helpful, or whatever it might be, if you check those boxes, if that's doing it for you, then share it with someone you know. So again, if you're a fan of the show, share it with someone you know. That's it. That's all I got. Let's get to the show. Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Indie Game Movement, the podcast that talks about the marketing and business of indie games. I'm Andrew Pappas. I'm going to be your host today, and we're going to be talking about unleashing your IP's revenue potential. Now, we all understand the importance and value an IP has, and rightfully so. However, sometimes studios don't see beyond this, finding it difficult to visualize and unlock their IP's true potential. So today, we're going to explore creative approaches, simple yet powerful mindsets, and other monetization strategies that can unleash your IP's full revenue potential while working towards sustainability. So that's what we're going to be talking about right here today on Indie Game Movement. Hey everybody, and we're back, and today with us I have Steve Duran. Steve, how it is going, buddy? And thanks for being a guest on the show.
Oh, well, thank you so much for inviting me. I love to be here because as we were talking previously, today is a special day for us. So happy to be here. We will be talking about why it's important this day, so yes. I will leave that to know a little bit later.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, it is an important day, but at any rate, want to give a quick introduction to Steve here. He is the founder of Ogre Pixel Games, a nice, fun, loving indie studio based in Mexico. They have developed and published games such as Lonesome Village, Jumper John, Pixel Stars, and currently working on a tiny sticker tale. That's another game that you guys have in production. But that said, or starting with, or whatever, we're going to get into more, obviously, in a little bit about that. But also, some really interesting stuff about you guys too. You guys were founded back in 2014, and there's been a lot of transitions and everything else that happened during that journey, but now it's a full-time thing that you guys are doing, really taking the time needed to progress and keep I can't really talk that well right now. It's okay. It's taking the time to progress and really grow at a steady rate since then. And which leads us perfectly into what you were sharing before, why this is an important date. So folks, at the time of recording, this is June 15th. And how Steve and I actually met was, I think, randomly somewhat on Reddit exactly 6 years ago to the date of this recording. And that's why it was so special, because Steve, we didn't really keep in touch for a certain period of time. We met randomly, chatted for a bit. I think it was around the conversation of you looking to quit your day job and do this, and the struggles and everything else that comes with that type of decision. I think I was in a similar situation too with what I was doing. And yeah, we just connected from there. And then we just basically lost connection for any number of reasons that typically happen when we all get busy with life, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we were two strangers with the same kind of, let's say, problems. Yeah, because we were, we have a lot of doubts to if we were ready to leave our day job, to step into our own business. So yeah. I remember we were talking through email. Then years after that, we were talking on Discord. And yeah, again, during years, we were not talking, but then we recently started talking again. Yeah. So the cool thing is that uh, the kind of communication we had was that kind of communication where you don't have to talk all the time,
Yeah, yeah.
and you feel like you talk like a couple of days ago, even if years passed from that.
Yeah, and you know what? I honestly, those I feel those are the best relationships. And so many times I like having those conversations with, like, friends and stuff like that you grew up with, and years pass, and next thing you know, you're like talking like it was you've been seeing each other like every other week, even though so much time has passed. So yeah, no, I know, and it's just great that we have that going, and that we're here now, having this very interesting discussion that I don't think we've ever really talked about on the show before. So again, even for that reason, in addition to everything else, just really exciting to have you here. So brief introduction to Steve there, and a little history that you guys get to learn about us too, where kind of connections matter, and just because you don't see something come together, whatever you envision that to be, doesn't mean that they won't. And again, Steve, here you are with me having this great conversation today. So before we get into that, though, I want to have you go into the Q box round. And for those folks who aren't familiar, it's just a series of quick random questions I got prepared here for Steve. So Steve, are you ready for the Q box round?
Okay, yeah, let's go.
All right. So, what was the most inspirational game you ever played?
Okay, this is an interesting question, and the answer is very, very easy for me. The most inspirational game was the Legend of Zelda: Link's Awakening for the Game Boy, the original Game Boy. And the reason it's inspirational was because I'm the youngest of my family of brothers. They used to play the Nintendo Entertainment System, and I was a kid when they started playing. So they were playing Super Mario, and when I was a kid, Super Mario was very hard for me because this game requires skills. You had to keep moving and be the skills to for the platforming game. So I remember that one day my parents gave me a Game Boy, and the Game Boy came with The Legend of Zelda: Link's Awakening. And even if I didn't understand a word from this game, because as you mentioned previously, I'm from Mexico, and back in that moment I didn't know a word of English. I love that game because that game didn't force me to keep moving to go through. So yeah, that's it. That feeling when I could take Link and just be there hanging around. Yeah, that was very inspirational for me.
Nice, and that's a good story too, to go along with it. All right, next, what's one thing that motivates you every day?
Um, yeah, I think that the most important thing for me in this moment is my family, my kids. I have three kids, and yeah, I want to kind of succeed doing in this business because I want to leave this kind of example to my kids,
Mm,
uh, to teach them and help them to that it's possible to work on what they love, what's their passion.
yeah, no, and it's funny, like, because you and I, we both have three kids. I think if I remember correctly, they're pretty close in each other's ages and stuff. And these are like, I think, I I don't think it's exclusive to us, obviously, but these are things that I think a lot of, you know, developer dads, if you will, probably share, So no, that's a cool, and definitely see that as being a big motivator. And last but not least here on the show, one of the staples is, what game are you playing now?
Yeah, this is a funny question. Funny for me because as as I have a family, I have kids. I don't have time to play
It's like
games. I mean,
my answer
the
all the
last
time.
game, yeah, the last game I was playing was The Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom,
Yeah. Okay.
and I
Same.
haven't finished the game. I was just playing and playing with my family. Like, hey, kids, I will be playing on the TV. Check what I'm doing, and once they get bored and start doing other things, I will stop playing and continue with them in other stuff. And the reason of that is that uh, I'm most of the time here working on Pixel. So yeah, I split my time between work and family mostly.
Mm, yep. And even if you do have the time, it's a matter of fighting for that TV to
Yeah.
to be able to play at any rate. But uh, that's great. Definitely love hearing that. And but I mean, hey, it sounds like you at least have made some time recently to play some games if you've been playing Tears of the Kingdom. So that's at least you're getting some time in there. But good that it's mostly focused on work, and when it's not work, it's your family. So awesome to hear. Cool. Well, thank you so much for sharing more about yourself, about those things, all important stuff. But now we're ready to get into this conversation, why we're all here today, which is, unleashing your IP's revenue potential. And again, this isn't something we've really talked about much in the past. And I mean, just some quick context here, folks. Like this, when Steve and I reconnected again, it was just simply for the matter of just like, hey, how's it going? And that type of stuff, and just catching up. But then upon doing so, it was interesting. I reached out to you because I can't remember, either I heard it somewhere else or you shared that you were working on tiny sticker tail, and it's currently in Kickstarter. And I looked at that and looked into further, and then saw you had Lonesome Village, which you probably going to provide us with more context. But I saw this opportunity to have this discussion, especially at such of more of like, I guess, an indie level, because I mean that's basically what you guys are, a small indie studio. So with the idea of IP and all this stuff and what you're working on currently. I want to back it up to before you got to the point of this current Kickstarter with Tiny Sticker Tail, before we even talked about the relation that has to other games that you have or game. When you're creating a project, what would you say, like, what's that process like when you're envisioning how your IP can be used other than, the game or the project that you're working on itself?
Yeah, it's interesting. I will tell you something. When I start creating games as Ogre Pixel trademark, I mentioned I because Ogre Pixel start mostly by my own. I was doing coding, art. My wife helped with stories, but pretty much the guy behind the computer was me. Uh, what we wanted to create was a universe like the Tolkien universe with different games. We created uh, three games in the same universe, and that didn't have that kind of direct relationship with an IP. But yeah, pretty much it's kind of the same, at least for me, because we're creating we're creating something which is bigger than a game. And now with Lonesome Village and A Tiny Secret Tale, they are both games part of the same universe, and they are very and they are we have a merge for them, and also the reason I like to do this kind of not just thinking in the IP for the game itself, but for other stuff like plushies, like stickers, etc. Is that also because of what I saw with the Nintendo franchise, like
Mm.
Zelda, Mario. That's the main inspiration. Um, I am a big fan of The Legend of Zelda. I was a collector of The Legend of Zelda uh, stuff. Before I like to say that at least here in Mexico, before everybody else was uh, getting stuff from Zelda. I'm
Mm.
talking back in 1999. I had my action figures. Nobody had that action figures, at least here in Mexico. And yeah, I love that as a fan. And now I'm taking that love for that stuff for our own products. So pretty much is that's the reason why we are when we create a new game, we are thinking in the IP not just for the game but for other stuff. And the other stuff could mean anything. Could be books and an animated cartoon. You know.
Yeah. I think this is really interesting because one, a lot of what you just said came out of influence, which, it goes back to, one of our Q box questions in terms of how much that really influenced you. And it was more ways than just simply playing the game, right? I mean, there's other elements of that experience that really carried with you and that you're, bringing into the fold with your business and also, carrying it out in different ways. But on top of that too, what I think is really important is just simply the fact that you called out saying like, you know, from the beginning, you're kind of envisioning this right from the get go, like really like trying to understand how can everything, and it's not like you always want to do plushies or you always want to do one thing or the other. It's just keeping that open mind about that possibility of it more than anything.
Exactly. And something I uh, another strong reason to think that way is that I'm a big fan of the lore of the games. So when I try to put a little bit of the lore on anything I can. I mean, if we have a scene in the game where there is a portrait with a painting,
Mm.
I myself I like that to use that asset to enrich the lore for the game. So I think that putting everything in the same place helps to from one side enrich the lore. I hope I explain myself, and on the other side to create products which can generate revenue other than the game itself.
Yeah. And let me ask you this real quick because in a moment I do want you to provide some additional context here because I know I didn't do the best job at doing that and how all these things that we're kind of talking about today relate. But let's say with your earlier project, was that process similar in terms of like envisioning like your IP? Because I know some of your earlier games were a bit different, maybe thematically, but there's probably some overlap, obviously. But like, or did that kind of, it was in the back of your mind and you started slowly like envisioning it more and more as you matured as a developer, as you gained experience, as all these other things happen. Was that the process, or I'm just curious in terms of how it relates to the past projects?
Yeah, it's interesting because on the very first projects, when we started creating games, uh, we had that vision to have those games in the same universe and have the possibility to create other products. After that, we launched two other games. One of them is Pixel Stars, and the other one is Jumper John, and they don't follow that vision. And the reason of that was because for Pixel Stars, we wanted to create the classic free-to-play game for mobile platforms with a very, let's say, uh, hyper-casual gameplay. And yeah, we work on that product more in thinking more into creating that kind of products which work we personally don't like that kind of products, and I think that was the reason because that was the reason why Pixel Stars didn't work very well. So I am not ashamed to share this, but we created a product uh, about something we don't like very much, and that didn't work. And I think the
Mm.
reason it didn't work was because of that. And on the other side, for Jumper John, this was a product we worked for on Apple Arcade,
Hmm.
and that game didn't have anything to do with um, with the previous games because at first Jumper Jump was an experiment. It was a prototype we were showing at GDC back in 2018, and then Apple that prototype. Uh, Apple knew that prototype and they were interested in that, and they say like, hey, let's work on this as part of the platform. And yeah, that's also another product which didn't follow uh, that vision from the previous games.
Mm.
But after Jumper John, now with Lonesome Village, is that we are trying to do the same. I mean, and we can see with Lonesome Village and A Tiny Secret Tale, they are games which are part of the same universe. They are similar. The when we run the Kickstarter campaign for Lonesome Village, people love the art style, the
Mm.
aesthetic for the game, and all the stuff we created around. We have plushies for the main character, which is Wes, Coyote.
Yep.
Yeah, people loved Wes, and yeah, so it, again, it was the circumstances were taking us to different paths, but yeah, we're getting to the same place where we start at.
Yeah, and that's so great to hear because ultimately it came back down to like, hey, when we got to stay kind of true to our vision, what feels right for us. And I think in a way we don't look at it as such a all as much as maybe we should in some cases, but staying to your vision is also kind of a key and important strength in a way. Like anybody else should, focus on strengths and things like that. But it sounds like and that it worked out, especially, and now it's like starting to pay off. So it's really good to hear that. Now, real quick, because I know we talked a little bit some about Lonesome Village and a tiny sticker tail. Could you just give us a quick like rundown summary of what Lonesome Village is about as a game, and then just kind of like how it performed in general?
Okay, yeah. Lonesome Village is a relaxing fantasy adventure about solving puzzles and social simulation. This is like a mix between the Legend of Zelda dungeon puzzles with a little bit of social simulation like Animal Crossing. So the gameplay is the game loop is very simple. There is a tower where you have where or the player which takes the role of Wes Coyote has to solve puzzles. Every time a puzzle is solved, an NPC or a group of NPCs, villagers, they are rescued from the tower and they are outside, so you can interact with them and be their friend and do that kind of social simulation activities. And then you go back to the tower, solve more puzzles, and then rescue more villagers. And pretty much that's Lonesome Village. It has we call it a cool and intriguing story to share. Um, yeah, pretty much that's uh, Lonesome Village. What it's about. That was our first game launched on PC and consoles. We launched Lonesome Village last year, November, and since then it has been performing uh, really well. I mean, to be honest, the launch of the game was not really really good, but until this day it keeps selling, and I think the reason why the game keeps selling is that because of all the details we have in the game. It's very easy to spread the word about the game, because there is a lot of things to do, a lot of details that catch the players. That's what I think.
Hmm. Yeah, and I mean, it still kind of goes back to kind of like staying true to the vision, and like even from all that inspiration and the influence from Nintendo, which I think is pretty cool. And staying true to that, and you know, that cozy look and feeling, and then plus that level of you know, engagement in terms of the little stuff that matters, the lore, you know, all those other little elements that you're kind of playing off is cool. Um, so again, thank you for providing that context, because Lonesome Village really kind of sets the stage here for some of what we're talking about, or a good portion of, which is Tiny Sticker Tail. So I'm just curious too. I mean, and maybe we already covered this too, but maybe there's something else as well. Like, was there any other particular point that you determined creating a new project deriving from Lonesome Village was worth pursuing? So I mean, you're always looking to explore the IP further, as you said, from kind of like the beginning. But at what point did you decide, okay, let's make another project, kind of like taken from that Lonesome Village world?
Yeah. On Pixel, we like to create games which have something that makes our products kind of unique. And we are not obviously the only studio looking into that. So we have this sticker mechanic in mind. To give a little bit of context, a Tiny Sticker Tale is a small adventure about where the main character, which is a donkey, has the ability to take anything from the world as a sticker and keep it in the sticker book, and then go to another place and take that sticker and place back in the world. And with this, players can solve puzzles, can get different reactions, different effects. So we have this mechanic in mind, like, hey, it would be cool to have a game with that kind of mechanic, gameplay mechanic. And then after we launched Lonesome Village, it was easy for us to consider working on something in the same universe, because we didn't have to think in a different art style or different setting for that game. So yeah, we were like, hey, this idea can work on a game which will be in the same universe. And yeah, that was the reason why we ended up working on a Tiny Secret Tale the way it is now.
Yeah, and what I think is really cool about that, I know you just mentioned that, you know, approximately a year ago, November of 2022, you launched Lonesome Village, and here we are, not even a year later, you know, making good pathways to launching this other title. So, I mean, if you look at it from a dev cycle perspective, and in terms of releasing another product, I mean, that's pretty short and good. Not only that, I mean, there's a lot of other interesting things going on too. It's like you know, Lonesome Village had a successful Kickstarter campaign, great following. Yeah, maybe had a little bit of a bumpy launch, but it's still gaining traction. It still has that audience there and everything else. So to take that and, you know, turn out something else that still provides value to this audience is really interesting, especially in that short amount of time. So it's all really interesting stuff, and how you're really leveraging this IP. Now, with that in mind, I mean, this all sounds great, but were there any like logistical or development factors that kind of like played into the decision as well? I mean, was it easier? Was it harder? Like,
Yeah, yeah. The Lonesome Village was planned to be a game to be developed in 1 year or 1 year and a half as the development timing. But what happened is that Lonesome Village took almost 3 years to develop. So this game, Lonesome Village, is very big. Gameplay, the critical path to finish the game is around 8 hours of gameplay, and so we didn't kind of like that experience because it's very hard to create a game of that scale.
Mm.
And for this one, it's a smaller product with a smaller scope, and that's why the game is titled a tiny sticker tail. So of course, the price will be smaller, and yeah, this is a smaller product. Um, we feel the size of this game and the development timing for this game is enough for the gameplay itself. I mean, for Lonesome Village, we created this game that big because on one side because of the good reaction from the people on the Kickstarter, and on the other hand because of the kind of gameplay it had. It had puzzles. It had social simulation. On the social simulation part, players can take a lot of time playing that part, and this game is different. So yeah, that was a reason why this game is different than Lonesome Village in terms of the size of the game and of course the development time.
Yeah. So, and again, I think that those are all key factors into kind of, I mean, we can go on a tangent here, but we're not. But in terms of like, that shorter cycle, how can that get to your product? I mean, gets us like other funding goals. How can that, move forward with the next project and things like that? So it's all really interesting to kind of hear like what that process was and be like, okay, we got to scale down. And not only that, not just scaling down, but also like setting the expectations, even though, I mean, I'm not familiar with how much marketing or other things that you've been doing outside of your Kickstarter for Tiny Sticker Tail, but I mean, it's in the name to set expectations. I think even the initial budget funding goal for the Kickstarter is kind of an indication. There's so many various indicators, I think, that are aligning with kind of what this vision, what the project is, but also setting those expectations for players, still giving them something of value, but also still letting them know like, hey, this is something big. But on another side of that, I'm also a little curious because I know how creating Tiny Sticker Tail is like the same but different, but like, and maybe I think you may have already showcased these, but how come it wasn't something more along the lines of like a Lonesome Village sequel?
We are interested in creating a sequel or creating a spin-off or something to enrich the lore and the story for Lonesome Village. But yeah, we feel this will be a bigger project, and also we wanted to use or to work on a Tiny Secret Tail to as a kind of taking a break before working on something bigger like a sequel. Yeah, pretty much that's the reason.
And, I mean, and it's important to, I think, come forward and say that because, keeping those projects like variable, if you will, because like you said, like take a break. It's still something it is a kind of, I mean, it's still work in a way, but it's nowhere near the same type of work as it would be as, if you are making a sequel or an entirely different project that's maybe not playing 100% to your strengths, So, that makes complete sense. One other thing I'm really curious about too, though, and is that this is like kind of, it's, I'm not putting words in your mouth or anything. From what I could tell really quickly, I would say it is somewhat of an offshoot, but even though it's obviously a different mechanic with this Tiny Sticker Tail, the sticker mechanic. So, but that aside, I'm also curious too. That's I would say the main differentiator, but what ways did you also differentiate the project enough to appeal to your current following? Because you guys do have a following with Lonesome Village, but also further expand that audience. Let's say people who aren't familiar with Lonesome Village. So what were some of the main differentiators, but but still kept your audience, but made it broad enough to get new players, new audience members?
Uh, yeah, I think that the most obvious, yeah, as you mentioned, is the mechanic, and also something different with a tiny secret tale is uh, I will call it the presentation of the game or
Mm.
of the gameplay. In Lonesome Village, we had the classic uh, area where the camera is following west in this case, and you have different big parts of scenarios to explore. And there was bigger areas in this game. The it's different. Each scenario is like a small diorama.
Mm.
So, and the reason why it's a diorama is because we want to give the players uh, the feeling of when I don't know you have seen or you remember.
I've seen the trailer on the Kickstarter.
Ah, yeah, but those books from for kids where you have the stickers and you could place them
Yep.
in the sheets to kind of create a story. Yeah, we wanted to create these small dioramas to give the player a very clear area where the stickers can be placed. So yeah, the presentation of the way the game looks is different, and the reason is that so what we are trying to differentiate from Lonesome Village is that if we use the same map from Lonesome Village, it will feel very pretty much the same game. It will be like, hey, this is a DLC for the game, and again, the most obvious thing is the sticker mechanic, and in the other, as a second way, is the these small dioramas.
Yeah, and as you were calling out to that, and I remember seeing the trailer, and folks, I highly encourage you just to check it out too, because it really is a good trailer for the type of game it is and everything else. One thing I picked up on too, which I think plays into a little bit what you're talking about, the diorama aspect, was I even from that trailer, I could pick up like what the types of interactions and to a degree, either the relationships you form with the other characters in the game, where it creates a own different sense of immersion. I know, that word probably gets tossed around a lot, right? Oh, it's a very immersive game. But it means so many different things, like whether it's an open sandbox exploration type game, that immersion is going to be very different than I think what you outlined, but there's still that level of immersion, and almost in a way like intimacy in terms of having the strong connection with other characters and then the story and everything, even though it's so simple and so clear in terms of what that direction is. So I mean, that's just something I picked up real quick just looking at the trailer, but I think it's a good point and plays into more of what you were talking about with the differentiator with that diorama-esque approach to the gameplay, because I think it adds its own level of immersion while being very distinct and stands out a little bit more too, I think, than some of your typical games that do that. And there's nothing wrong with that, but I just thought it was really interesting how you really called out to that, because then it spoke to me more when I'm like, oh yeah, that was a feeling I had when I was watching this trailer. So
Yeah, yeah, and also something we are always looking for our games is that I always tell the team uh, we have to reach into a certain level where if a screenshot from one of our games is taken, we want the players to very easily associate it with the game. I mean, um, yeah. For in this case, what we want is that if you check on Google Images a tiny secret tale and there appear screenshots from the game, yeah, so the players to know very clearly that screenshot is from a tiny secret tale.
that's a really good point, where you're making the game right now, and you're calling out, hey, look, if anybody shares this, we want to know without a doubt that if someone sees that, they will know exactly where it came from if they're familiar with it. And if not, like you said, with Google search or something along those lines, they could find out fairly quickly, or someone else could. And it's such I'm calling this out because it's like, it's so often we don't think about as a means of discoverability, in term and how quickly something can be identified. We generally, let's say, associate that with brands where, like, Nintendo, you list stuff of any character. Everybody right now is thinking of your character, your favorite Nintendo character, and boom, it's right there in front of you, right?
Yeah.
But the fact that you are leading in with that idea and mindset from this, this game, that let's say, there's going to be, it's not going to probably have, I'm not trying to downplay you here, but the same level of comparison that you could with like Nintendo, right? But the fact that you're leading in with that mindset and everything else, I think it speaks a lot. And it says that too in the execution when you're seeing these images, because they, like you said, they are clear and distinct. So anyway, sorry, a little bit of a tangent there, folks, but I think it's such an important thing to call out to think that way. It's like, hey, how can we make sure that anybody getting a screenshot can either easily identify or have this image be easily identified if someone isn't certain about it?
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, it has worked because we have seen comments on Twitter like, yeah, I saw this game and it reminded me of Lonesome Village.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
another great example.
Exactly. It's interesting because on one hand we have this differentiator, and on the other hand we also try to keep working on the same art style. And you can see on the characters from Lonesome Village and the characters from A Tiny Secret Tale, they have the same art style. They have the big head, the body, the floaty hands, the floaty feet, and yeah, that also helps. So yeah, it's important to have everything, at least for us, to have everything into consideration. Yeah.
Yeah, and some level of consistency, right? Even if it's like, we can both relate to this. We've been both playing it, and I'm sure a lot of people are still playing it. But like, Tears of the Kingdom, if you look, and there already have been side by sides with Breath of the Wild. But it's the same but different, right? In terms of the art style and everything else, it's very consistent, and that's a typical trait of Nintendo, anyways. I mean, how many Mario parties are we at now? That's besides the point. But well, that's it too. Kind of more on a strategic level here, and it does relate a little bit with what you were sharing about the art styles and such. Lonesome Village, as we shared earlier, also ran a successful Kickstarter campaign. And, currently, at the time of this recording, I believe probably the time it gets out, the Kickstarter may or may not end or close. Doesn't matter. You should still check out the trailer that's there and everything else. Good stuff. Tiny Sticker Tale, it is currently now live. Fun fact is that it did fund within, 2 hours, which is pretty cool. Yeah. But with that said, with the fact that you had these Lonesome Village Kickstarter, Sticker Tale Kickstarter, what were some of the key factors in deciding to kind of copy this strategy, or even other strategies that you used over to A Tiny Sticker Tale? I mean, were the things that you didn't copy over from a strategic standpoint, were the things that did? I mean, how much of this did you actually mirror for Tiny Sticker Tale compared to Lonesome Village from a strategic marketing standpoint, if you will?
Yeah. When of course it was the experience is different because this is our second Kickstarter, but I will talk a little bit about the first experience for Lonesome Village. And what we did back in that time was to investigate as much as we can about Kickstarter campaigns, successful, about tips, all that stuff. So what we found, the classic, like build your audience, uh, like start promoting with plenty of time,
Mm.
all the classic stuff. And we uh, the good something good we did in that time was to have enough time for preparation and planning and for the strategy for the campaign, because a very common mistake made by people who launches a Kickstarter which is not successful is that they don't they don't see this uh, time. This they don't consider this time to prepare for the campaign, and they just create the campaign, launch the campaign, and yeah, it's most of the times it doesn't work. So uh, we had a good Kickstarter for Lonesome Village. It was a big surprise for us. It was very great for us to have the game supported by so many people, and our social media increased a lot. Our Discord, yeah, increased a lot, and the experience was very great. Not only in terms of the funding we received, but mostly because of the reception of the people, the comments. We were working on something we already knew what is interesting for the people. So that that is what that's why we wanted to recreate that experience for a tiny secretary. The difference is that we didn't have to start from scratch. We already
Mm.
knew how to do that, and the process was very quickly. The difference from that experience to this experience is that we had a good uh, we have for this campaign we received a lot of support from the people who previously support Lonesome Village Kickstarter.
Mhm.
So that was the reason why it was funded very quickly in 2 hours, because when a creator launches a new campaign, all the people who supported a previous campaign will receive an email like from Kickstarter, like sharing that, hey, this creator you already supported has created this new product, and here's the link. So that helps a lot, and that's something very useful. I think that, and also because of the game was in the same universe, we had a lot of people helping from the previously Kickstarter campaign, and something a strategy we had for this campaign is that we are offering a special reward for the backers who previously supported our campaign for Lonesome Village and now are supporting this new campaign. We are offering an in-game special item. Yeah, that worked really great. Yeah, so pretty much that's why we created this new campaign and the difference.
Yeah, no, and these are all great examples too, especially, I mean, the the knowing your audience and doing that work and everything, and making sure the proper time is spent planning, not just putting it together, launching, all important factors, right? But then, I think you outlined a few things here at the end there, which is like, same creator. And I'm sure there's a lot of people who might not be familiar with that, but as a same creator, especially if you had a past project and stuff that was funded, people get notified on that. And that plays even more so if you have a product really focusing on that universe, like you said, that same IP, because it's like you already have these people that are there, and maybe they played the game and aren't as active as in your community, but now they're like, it gives them a reason and an opportunity to become more active and excited. I mean, there's so many good things that come out of that. And it's not to say there's anything wrong. Like, it's say if you, as a same creator, but making a different game and let's say completely different audience, that's fine too. But it's almost like you're kind of stacking up the benefits that can come by keeping it in either same universe or let's say same audience, which obviously a Tiny Sticker Tale and Lonesome Village are in the same creator, but then simply to really showcase that you guys care so much about these members, to give them that special reward if you've been a backer of Lonesome Village and now you're back in this new project. So those are some really interesting pointers, I would say, that you concluded there with that in the strategy. And yeah, I mean, it's tried, it's true, and the audience is the same, and a lot of other things. The only real thing that kind of differs a little bit is the experience that now allows you to kind of streamline that process. I mean, there's probably other little variables, things here and there, but for the most part, I mean, it's kind of like rinse, like wash, and repeat, so to speak. But just every time it gets a little bit better, which is always good.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Steve, we're definitely coming on time here, man. And this has been great. But before we do so, I would love to start closing with some, tips, suggestions, or anything that you could share with our listeners today about, what we talked about, how to kind of like do what you can to unleash your IP's revenue potential. So what are some tips that you would suggest people in terms of, what we discussed today?
Yeah, sure. I think one tip I will give is to think when you're thinking in a game, a setting, a story, the main character, to don't just think in that for the game, to open the vision to other stuff like that. That helps a lot because this gives can help with the inspiration for the game itself. Can that's something I really love to do. Not just think about all that stuff for the game. That one side. Another thing I would suggest is that for game developers mostly is to keep it simple and start with small projects. Another common kind of mistake I have seen is that new developers try to create huge projects. And another tip I will suggest is that share that passion, that share your product with your audience, even if you are haven't finished that. I mean, if you are working on it, if you have something cool to share it on your social media. Maybe at the beginning nobody will react or nobody will check it, but by doing this constantly, people will be reacting to what you're doing. And so I think those suggestions would be a good point of start for to create great products, not only great games, but also create good products and create great IPs.
Yeah, no, really, really great points there. And yeah, I mean, just in line with everything else you're saying too, like just really keep that vision open, right? Like, because again, you it seems like in the past you try to close it before, and then you're like, nope, got to keep it, got to go right back to it, and thus it's really making some good moves in your future and make getting some momentum, like really good momentum, and it feels good too. It's not just like one other thing. It's like meant to be. So again, no, all great stuff. Appreciate you sharing that. And again, as we close here, before we do, what are some great ways that people can go and check out Lonesome Village? They can check out A Tiny Sticker Tale or reach out to you or find out more about Pixel. What are some links that you can give us or ways that people can connect?
Yeah, sure. You can check all the stuff we're doing at Ogre Pixel on our social media channels. You can find us as Ogre Pixel on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. Our website is ogrepixel.com. And you can check our campaign on Kickstarter. The name of the game is A Tiny Sticker Tale. And yeah, so pretty much. Yeah, we have a Discord. The link to the Discord would be discord.mi/ogrepixel. And yeah, I personally are always there on the Discord. I like to be there because I have seen other Discords where I want to talk or get more involvement with the creators, and they are not there. They have admins, they have mods there, and I like to be there to be in touch with the audience. So yeah, you can find us there. Nice.
So folks, as Steve said, lots of different ways to get in touch with them. They're their website, ogrepixel.com, has all those methods of getting in touch with them too. We're going to obviously list a few of those in the show notes too, which are in the show's description of the podcast, wherever you're listening to it. But yeah, no, Steve's true to that. I've seen him like regularly just always be involved in his community, in his Discord, and chatting with everybody. So good to hear that's like part of your deal too, is to be as true as you can be and available when you can be. So again, thanks for everything. And yeah, check out Ogre Pixel, check out Lonesome Village. It's on Steam. I know occasionally you guys have sales on that, so definitely worth checking that out. And follow up and see how Tiny Sticker Tale has been doing since their Kickstarter. But Steve, again, can't thank you enough for sharing this valuable insight and some great points in terms of how you can really keep that open vision and making the most out of your product's IP revenue potential. So thanks again for being here on the show.
Oh, thank you so much. And it was great to talk with you, Andrew. And have a great rest of the day for you and all the people which is listening to this.
Thanks.
Hey everyone, thank you for listening to another episode of Indie Game Movement. I'm Andrew Pappas, your host, and the show's producer is Mustafa Price. Show notes for this episode can be found by visiting rengenmarketing.com, the number episode of the show. Rengen Marketing is a consulting marketing company that helps indie devs with their marketing efforts. Whether you need guidance with your game's marketing strategy or could use a free marketing plan template, then please visit www.rengenmarketing.com and take action. A special thanks to Dakota Saw for Season 2's opening theme and Melissa Gellis for the new logo design. And as always, thanks for being such great listeners, and we'll see you next time on Indie Game Movement.